we're talking about drive. You know, that fire inside you for ambition, for focus. But what if I told you that almost everything we believe about it is wrong? What if motivation isn't some fixed character trait, but a biological state that you can actually engineer? Today, we're going to tear down the myth of willpower and hand you the blueprint to architect your drive on command.
I really want you to let that sink in for a second. That label, procrastinator, it's a lie. It's a story a lot of us tell ourselves. But the real reason you feel like you can conquer the world at 9 a.m. but can't even start that same task at 4 p.m., that's not a moral failure. It's a fundamental mismatch of biology and action. You're not lazy, you're just playing by the wrong rules. You're trying to spark that fire of inspiration right in the middle of a biological downpour.
You see, the central myth we've all bought into is this lie of linear drive. It's this crazy idea that our willpower should be a perfectly flat line, 100% all day, every day. We treat our motivation like it's this daily test of character that, let's be honest, we feel like we're constantly failing. But the truth, the real science of how your brain actually uses energy, is that your drive is a circadian reflex. Your ambition isn't a constant. It's a thermodynamic state that literally changes hour by hour based on your brain's available energy budget. Now, that word hallucinates is the absolute key here. That feeling of laziness, that overwhelming urge to just not do the hard thing, it's not a real reflection of who you are. It's a powerful illusion, a conservation script that your brain creates. When its metabolic budget gets low, your brain literally hallucinates a lack of interest to protect the energy it has left. It's an ancient survival mechanism that today is sabotaging our modern ambitions. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to completely deconstruct the willpower hallucination. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty science of your brain's metabolic veto. After that, we reveal the solution, the motivation temperature protocol. We'll show you how to engineer the drive surge, and we'll wrap up with an immediate action plan you can start today, your first window audit. Okay, section 1. Let's tackle the core problem, the willpower hallucination. This is the reason your most critical work can feel electric in the morning, but by the afternoon, it feels like you're trying to lift a heavy, cold rock. We're about to dismantle this whole idea that you should just be able to push through it. Because as you're about to see, pushing against your own biology is the fastest way to burn out. The phenomenon we're really talking about here is called drive decay. And this isn't just about feeling a little tired. This is a real, measurable, biological cooling down of your brain. As you burn through cognitive energy all day, your brain's engine literally cools off and enters a conservation mode. And in this state, a high-stakes task that felt exciting just hours ago, finishing that big report, hitting the gym, starting a creative project, now feels genuinely impossible. The ambition is still there, but the biological machinery to act on it has been powered down. And this right here is probably the most important shift in thinking you can possibly make. Every single time you've beaten yourself up for losing focus at 3 in the afternoon, you were blaming your character for a law of physics. Let me say it again. You are not failing a moral test. You are simply obeying the physics of a brain that has hit its natural low point. So many of us live in a state of drive panic, right? Trying to force our nervous systems to be overclocked 24/7. But you can't out-hustle your own biology. The secret isn't to be tougher, it's to get smarter. It's to become a master of your own brain physics. So what's actually causing this shutdown? Why does that afternoon slump feel so final, so non-negotiable? Well, let's pop the hood and look at what we call your brain's metabolic veto. This is the science of what's really happening inside your skull when your motivation completely vanishes. So I want you to meet the gatekeeper of your focus, a part of your brain called the Anterior Cingulate Cortex, or the ACC. Think of the ACC as your brain's super strict accountant. For any task you even think about doing, it calculates the entry price, how much energy it's going to cost. When you're fresh in the morning, your metabolic budget is huge, and the ACC greenlights your most ambitious projects. But by the afternoon, when your energy reserves are low, the ACC looks at that exact same project, decides the price is way too high for the budget, and it slams down a hard veto. And this isn't just a suggestion, it is a full-on systemic hijack. The ACC will actively divert your attention to something cheap and easy, like scrolling on your phone, to protect its resources. And this is exactly how we get trapped in what I call the amateur's loop. It all starts when you try to ignore that veto and force yourself to work late in the day. Your brain immediately freaks out. It signals dread and starts desperately looking for an escape. But here's the really damaging part. By forcing it,
You anchor that important task to the feeling of pain. Your brain learns that deep work equals suffering. And the result? The very next day, the motivation temperature for that task is even lower. You are literally creating conditioned failure, training your brain to avoid your most important goals.
This slide just visualizes how ridiculously inefficient that whole approach is. When you try to work when you're neuro-cold, you're not really being productive. What's happening is execution poverty. As you can see here, maybe 20% of your energy is going into the actual work. So where's the other 80% going? It's being burned in an internal civil war, you fighting against your brain's own self-defense mechanisms. You end up feeling completely exhausted, but you've made almost zero real progress. It's the worst of both worlds. So, how do we break this destructive cycle? Simple. We stop being a victim of our biology, and we start becoming its architect. And that brings us to the solution, the motivation temperature protocol. Now, this is not just another productivity hack. This is like a RAM upgrade for your drive. It's a true engineering blueprint for moving from drive fragility to what we call architectural velocity, where your motivation is no longer a matter of hope, but a matter of design. The protocol is built on 3 core layers. First up, the chronotype audit. This is where you stop asking, what should I do? And you start asking, when is my brain biologically ready to do this? You scientifically find your personal high heat windows. Second is window consistent execution. This is where you architect your effort, perfectly matching your hardest tasks to your peak energy states. And third, strategic recalibration. Instead of fighting the dip, you engineer the reset. You use those low energy periods for recovery and low stakes work, preserving your power for when it really matters. And the result of all this is profound. It literally transforms your focus from this flickering, scattered radar, constantly searching, never quite locking on, into a precision torch. A concentrated, high-energy beam that just burns through complexity and resistance. It's the difference between being busy all day and being deeply, truly effective for just a few targeted hours. It's about creating real impact, not just generating activity.
So, why does this protocol work so incredibly well? Well, it has nothing to do with positive thinking. It's about leveraging the hardwired mechanics of your brain. So let's dive into the neurobiology that's happening behind the search, because once you understand the science, you'll have the conviction to actually do this.
The core mechanism we're hacking here is called resource gating. Remember that entry price the ACC calculates? By timing your work correctly, you are manually hacking that calculation. It's kind of like trying to lift a really heavy box. If you try to lift it from an awkward angle, it feels impossible, right? But if you find the perfect leverage point, suddenly it feels light. Resource gating is finding that leverage point for your brain. The task itself doesn't change, but your brain's perceived cost of doing it just plummets, resistance vanishes, and action starts to feel, effortless.
And we're not talking about a small effect here. Shifting from clock-driven work, it's 2 p.m., I guess I have to do this, to state-driven execution, this is my peak window and I will protect it, can drop your brain's internal resistance signal by as much as 40%, almost instantly. Think about that. Nearly half the friction you feel when you're trying to start something can be eliminated, not with more discipline, but just with better timing.
So what you're really seeing here is a fundamental rewiring of your brain's response to work. The old way, forcing work when you're in a trough, keeps you trapped in your anterior cingulate cortex. That's the brain state of conflict, friction, and dread. The new way, executing in your peak window, activates the ventral striatum, which is the brain's core center for action and reward. You achieve what we call neural coherence, where your focus isn't being drained by that internal civil war anymore. It's concentrated entirely on the mission.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory, but where do you actually start? Let's get super practical. This final section is an immediate activation protocol. This is your first step to stop fighting the clock and start activating the wave. And you can do this today.
First things first, you need to identify your single most valuable asset, your power window. Now, this isn't just when you feel okay. This is that very specific, often short block of time where your brain is naturally primed for the aggressive, high-stakes, cognitively demanding stuff. For most of us, it's a 90-minute to 3-hour block in the morning, but yours might be totally different. Your number one job is to identify this window and then protect it with an almost religious zeal.
So here is your experiment for the next 3 days. And this isn't just a test, it's a data gathering mission on your own peak performance. Step 1, identify that single power window. Be brutally honest with yourself. When are you a cognitive athlete? Step 2, protect its purity. For the next 3 workdays, that window is sacred ground. You are only allowed to work on your single most important priority. No email, no social media, no meetings, no exceptions. You are cleansing the window. And step 3, sieve the trough. Look at your afternoon calendar right now and kill any high-complexity task schedule there. Move it. The goal here is to prioritize the velocity of your timing over the volume of your effort.
And look, managing your trough is just as critical as protecting your peak. During these low energy periods, the rules are simple. Absolutely no deep strategy meetings, no creative brainstorming, and definitely no difficult conversations. What you can do is admin work, clear out that inbox, organize files, pay bills, and yes to planned rest. This is an investment, not a cost. It's strategic recovery so you can hit tomorrow's power window with full force. So let's bring this all home. If you remember only one thing from our time together, let it be this. Drive is an engineered wave, not a character trait. You can't outperform a circadian trough. Your biology will always, always win. True greatness isn't about pushing through pain. It's about timing your efforts so perfectly that the climb feels inevitable, like you're riding a powerful wave instead of trying to claw your way up an ice wall. And that brings us to our final actionable mantra. Protect the window to claim the impact. Your highest contribution, your deepest work, your biggest breakthroughs, they are all waiting for you right inside that power window. But they will only show up if you create and defend the biological conditions for them to appear. The window is where your potential becomes your performance. Your impact is waiting for you. The only question is, will you finally architect the conditions for it to emerge?